good afternoon. Welcome to SHEDcast number 12. Hi, I'm Marcel, and this is Tom. Welcome, Tom. Does your mic work?
Hi, lovely to be here, Marcel. Thank you for inviting me. I hope so.
Oh, there's a massive lag.
It worked a second ago.
Yeah, it does work, but there's a massive,
you're joking.
Lag. That is weird. I thought you were joshing me at first. I thought you were just like mouthing.
After all that technical testing.
Until your voice came through. Yeah, it's Letters Classic. Okay, what I'll do is I'll try. I don't know where the fault is. Let's just try bumping you out the stream and then bump you back in again and see if that fixes it. Stand by. Stand by your beds. Right, that got rid of him. Quick, run. Try him back in again. Try that.
That's right. Right, how are we doing?
Without moving your lips.
Of course, the dog is now going to have a meltdown. We are. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Right. First, Hobbit. Yep. It's going to be a meltdown. The dog has not made a single noise all day until the start of this, and the microphone has worked perfectly. Right. Are you hearing me live?
I've said it before. I will say it again. Never let anybody say that this is a well-oiled professional operation. What I suggest we do, Tom, is that you drop out of the stream, like at the bottom there, leave studio, and then come back in and see if that freshens things up. We'll see you back here in a few seconds.
See you in a few.
Dear viewer, welcome to the party. We've got a couple of messages coming in. So Nick Cannon in the Isle of Man. Hi from sunny Isle of Man. Namaste. Or as I like to say, namaste in bed. Sound is good, he says, just the actors. Perfect from Dan, really? Hello, Dan. Is it perfect from there? That was very strange because I was getting a massive lag. Okay, let's try it. Let's try bumping Tom back in. He's back. Hello, Tom.
Hello, how are we doing?
It's better, but it's still really laggy. Clap your hands. Okay, it's close. Yeah, okay. It's not. Yeah, okay. Well,
I see a significant improvement on my side. It's not like talking to a mime anymore.
Okay, yes, it's getting better all the time, actually. Clap your hands again now. Yeah, that's good enough for the rest of us. So that's, so welcome to the somewhat shabby SHEDcast.
Again, thank you for having me. That isn't a delay from the first time. I am saying that again.
I love it. Brilliant. Let me just shove in a banner saying, yes, obviously we are broadcasting live to Facebook and YouTube. Join us wherever you can. The ticker we can stick along the bottom saying, invite your friends and family to join the discussion. We can do that. And let me see. Oh, I'll change this ticker as well. If you are on Facebook, dear viewer, and there's over a dozen of you right now, increasing all the time. If you're on Facebook, do us a lemon flavor and go to the link above or below. I don't know where Facebook makes it up as it goes along. Sometimes it puts it up above, sometimes below. Go to the link, streamyard.com/Facebook, and just click on that. A window will pop up and it'll say, allow StreamYard to see your name and face icon business. So that as Nick is commenting here, we can get to see it's Nick and we can get to see his ugly mug. And he says, sounds okay, bro. Fine. Well, that's good. We're sorted. And you're Ron joining us. It's a long way from the Isle of Man. Ron is a Guernsey shedder. So welcome to the party, Ron. Question for you, Ron, is how is your salt and spice rack? Not salt. It's your spice rack. I was going to say salt and pepper rack, but spice rack. Before the shed closed in Guernsey, which is mid-March, Ron was working on a spice rack, and the last communication I had from Ron was that it was all done and groovy, but he had to work out the lifting mechanism. So, Ron, how's your lifting mechanism? Do tell. Now, so that's cool. Let's kill some of these banners off. We don't need to know that we're broadcasting live to the 2, but if you want to invite someone, send them a link somehow on YouTube. If you look up on YouTube, if you look up Men's Shed Guernsey, and on Facebook as well, actually, you can look up Men's Shed Guernsey. We're streaming there and out through the UK Men's Shed Association Facebook page, etc., etc. So it's good to have you with us. Bit of an odd show this week. No offense, Tom. Guilty as charged.
I don't know what to say to that. Yeah, I've been called worse, and less accurately.
Now I'm going to change our view. The question here is, Tom, where are you? And if you scooch to the side, I think you're left. Is that no? The other right. It's the right. I'm always wrong because it's my left. So watch what happens here. If I do this, it'll obliterate your face. There you go. So you can talk us down. Whereabouts are you?
Here we go.
Dolry, do you pronounce it Dolry?
It's Dalry.
Dalry. You're making it up as you go along.
No, Dalry. It's a tiny town in the southwest of Scotland, and it's a lovely little town, very country. And like the other day, a cow walked down the road at 11 o'clock on a Friday night, and I had to go and coax it back into a field. Like it is. I mean, we're talking full-on Guernsey country style. Like,
excellent.
Not a Guernsey cow though.
So yeah, sort of Tortable style.
Yes, certainly so. Like there's like 2 little shops and a very small but very nice town. Like
small but perfectly full.
Oh, absolutely.
It sounds lovely. It sounds absolutely lovely. How long have you been there? You're a Guernsey boy, but you moved away.
I did. 10 years ago, I moved to Glasgow, and I did a degree in physics at Strathclyde. And then I moved back to Guernsey for a few years, worked in finance.
Ooh.
Not really my cup of tea, little lacking in adventure, I'd say, and creativity. And I moved back up to Scotland, about 3 or 4 years ago now, and started a dog walking business. Because, all physicists really want to express themselves through, walking dogs, apparently. I have very little interest in commercial world or anything else. I like playing with dogs and I like tinkering. So, a lot of spare time, a lot of dogs to play with.
Yeah, brilliant. So, of course, lockdown has hit you a bit hard then because no woggy dorking?
No, none at all. It's an interesting industry for that because anyone who needs us, they need us because they're not home, which means I need to enter their house. And there's no entering people's houses, so that immediately shut down the business. And it's I'm lucky I'm quite wanted. I think I feel lucky that my clients want me to come back, even though a lot of them are working from home. So we're very slowly restarting. But Scotland has been very careful on the lockdown. We are not opening up as quickly as England has, and we haven't been as lucky as Guernsey has with controlling it so well.
Sure, yeah. Well, yeah. England seems to be running a bit gung-ho. I was listening to Radio 4 News at 1 o'clock and hearing what was being put past Boris's face, and I thought it was reasonable criticism, but of course you're just detracting from public confidence. I'm saying that because the public have no confidence in you.
Without being too political, I've been calling him Boris nonsense for a lot longer than he has been having so much trouble or has even been in charge. He's a very strange. He's a very strange fellow. With a lot more power than sense. But again, each to their own. Like,
talking of which, I must admit I've started this Shedcast jolly, and that's one thing that I enjoy about this Shedcasting business. Is I suppose as host I feel obliged to be on the up and on the jolly side, but I will confess to being quite dismayed today and over the last week to hear what's coming out of the US, without getting all political about it. I'm more than dismayed. That's a real understatement. Oh, that's the dog and bone. I'm not home. I bet it's someone phoning to ask if they can help me service my Windows computer. And whenever somebody phones to tell me that, to offer me their services, that's all right. The secretary got it. But on more than one occasion, I've said to someone, well, I don't have any Windows computers. I've got an Apple Mac. And they've, to my face, metaphorically down the phone, said, you lie. I want to sort out your Windows computer. Well, I don't have any Windows computers. I've used Apple Mac. No, you're lying to me. Wait, okay, steady on.
I have a simpler approach of telling them that we're a conservatory sales company and we have plenty of windows.
Splendid, yeah. Well, they'd be rubbing their hands together at that point.
Yeah, that's it. Windows, doors, double glazing, triple glazing. Oh, we've got it all.
Yeah. So, yeah, I hope everyone else is keeping their pecker up, because I must admit that my pecker is decidedly down after catching some of the latest news from last night's activities in the States. I'm really, my love and heart goes out to everybody in America right now, because nobody deserves that kind of treatment.
It's very difficult to defuse a powder keg once it has already gone off.
Yeah,
this is the situation they're in.
And this, the whole acronym, not acronym, but the old adage of fighting fire with fire, it as a forestry, management technique, I get it. But yeah, pouring gasoline on a barbecue is probably gasoline. I sound American. God, petrol. Pouring petrol on a barbecue, perhaps not the best plan. Anyway, so forgive me for indulging, but I just wanted to.
It's important current events.
Share it. Yeah, I think anything anybody can do, even over here, even on a little rock in the channel. Hey, Pooch. Even on a rock in the channel, it's important that we're informed and we keep abreast of it. And when the opportunity comes to speak up, that we seize that opportunity is really important.
Indeed.
Ron has just chipped in saying this is to do with his spice rack that he was working on before lockdown. Mechanism still in planning stage, but it's a different color. Okay, that's good news, Ron, but I'm a little bit disappointed. I expected to see, worm drives and stepper motors and a little switch with on the front, the limit switches so it can slide. Come on, you've had 12 weeks or so now, Ron. I tease. And Nick in the Isle of Man is saying, Tom is a card. Keep your pecker up, Marcel. So many good folk. Yes, you are a card indeed, Tom.
Thank you, Nick.
Great. Now, one thing I was going to ask you to do, Tom, was I was going to ask you to add a photo to your photo album, but we didn't have time before we rocked up. So what I'm going to do is I'll do a quick share screen, and we will share photos. There we go. Share that. Ta-da! I'll do it from here, if that's all right. Now, what are we looking at here, Tom? Let's get into what you've been up to over lockdown.
Okay, so the top is how our garden was looking. We moved in a little while ago. There hadn't been much time to deal with the garden. Moving house is a lot of stuff. And the back garden was fairly... the council, before we moved in, had cleared most of the rubbish, apart from a trampoline, which is, I would have thought, hard to miss. But, it's... let's say no more about the council for it. But, we wanted to do something with this garden. I love sitting in the garden. I'm very outdoors. It's why I couldn't work in an office. It's why I had such difficulty with basically everything apart from spending time with dogs and being outdoors. So we wanted a garden that reflected this side of our life. So what I did was I got as many pallets together as I possibly could, dismantled them. Up the back you notice it's unclad at the moment, but right at the back, it's basically the centre.
I've gone off. Oh, hang on. Technical user error.
Yep.
So what I'm going to do, I was trying to zoom in, but I clicked instead of zooming.
Okay.
Have you ever done that?
So right at the back, we've got there's obviously a table on the just left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side is a bench. These are to be clad, but it turns out you can't get any cladding delivered in lockdown, which I understand it's not exactly essential.
Fair enough.
So we'll use decking boards, and I might own a van, but decking boards are very, very large. They're very long.
Yeah.
So there is the skeleton of a nice bench and table. A little bit further forwards on the left-hand side, under the tree, is a little area just to have an open fire and a barbecue, just on the ground with some wood chipped down.
Lovely.
In front of it is vegetable boxes, and to the far right is vegetable boxes. Again, these have all been completely built out of pallets. And then on the front left-hand side, like behind the doghouse, is a wildflower sort of area that we're trying to put wildflower seeds down. I threw radish seeds in there. We had radishes that have come up, and we've actually produced produce that is being grown, not just like organically, as it were, but completely wild.
Lovely.
Which has been quite nice. There's broccoli growing in there and all sorts of things. And we're just gonna, when I do the dog walking, I walk through these really wild, unkept areas, and they are by far the most beautiful areas that I see. So we were looking to create just a little square of that. And then on the right-hand side of the path is a little sun area. We're having trouble growing any grass there at the moment, but we're working on it.
Have you had much rain up there? Because I heard on the news England's seen rain for sometimes in some places the first time in 4 weeks.
I think I was just sort of, I didn't calculate it, but I just kind of worked out it was about 40 days without any rain. Like we went through lockdown and I was like, this is 40 days and nights. And I'm not a religious person, but it's 40 days and nights in a desert. Basically, like we were, it was quite biblical what was happening to us in lots of ways.
Sure thing.
But well, I mean, I've been running sprinklers. I've been digging trenches and burying hoses underneath the ground. So we have sprinklers that can stay in place all the time. But that is a lot of effort. It turns out the soil that we're working with, that whole garden, as soon as you stick a spade in the ground, there's an old can of iron brew and a stone in every single shovel. Like,
great. Yeah.
So it has been and it's clay soil as well. So it's made it a very, very difficult. They actually call this area of Dalry, one of the gardeners told me they called it Chinatown, because all of the soil is made of clay. And it's just makes it difficult. All the nice gardens you see have been almost completely trenched and relaid with soil that's been brought in.
Right.
But obviously through lockdown, we're not doing that.
Yeah, of course.
And then on the left-hand side is a doghouse with, you'll notice, a couple of solar panels on the roof. The doghouse, the actual opening to it is through the fence. Oh,
okay.
So the dog comes in and out through the fence there rather than through the front, which is a slightly different style. But it made the area a little bit bigger, and it stopped it ruining my wildflower area. And because as important as a dog is, there was no point in sticking a giant doghouse on top of our on top of an area we'd kept.
Yeah, fair play.
And that doghouse was a bin shed. And it was not a very useful bin shed, because the bin shed, there are now about, you know how it goes at the moment, very rightly so. There are about 87 different types of bins each person has that are all color-coded in confusing ways. And every 3 years it changes what you put in them. So what it says on the bin isn't actually what goes in it.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And the bin shed was big enough for 2 bins. We have 5. So the bin shed got ripped down to make a bin area and rebuilt into a doghouse.
Yeah, your bin shed didn't keep up with the pace of change, is what you're saying.
No, that's it. And I considered like an expansion to the bin shed, but to be honest, it was thin. So it was like a one-way system. If you needed the back bin out, you had to take all the bins out.
Oh,
and then, and because you do one bin a week, unless there was no way, unless I created like a gate on each side and had a conveyor belt system where they moved through them, there's no actual way logically to make a bin shed work.
So that's your next project then.
Well, that's it. I'm going to build a new bin shed, but maybe out of the neighbour's fence there.
Lazy Susan. Yeah.
Yes.
Commenting from Nick saying, Tom, have you thought of a beehive? Excuse me. You might need more garden.
In all honesty, I quite like the idea of beehives, but I've only ever been stung once in my life, and it left me sitting in a Nissan Micra driven by a nun being sped to the hospital as the side of my neck swelled up. And since then, I was about 11 years old, and that just one of those weird situations, where you're in a Nissan Micra with a nun and a bee stings you, and then she tells you it's fine and then has to rush you to hospital. So, yes, as you do.
Fine. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So as much as I love outdoors, I don't think I'm gonna and wildflowers and all that. I don't think I'm gonna encourage vast quantities of bees, as important as they are to the ecosystem, to hang out outside my front door. There's not a nunnery for miles for a start. Safety first.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. Now let's get into your other photographs, and let's actually disclose what on earth you've been up to the last few weeks.
Okay, so this is 2 weeks since the start of this project, and the first thing we're looking at here is I looked at all the lights in my garden, and it is a very, very slow sunset in Scotland, in the summer. It takes hours. And when you get these solar lights, we all know the solar lights. Not only do ants like to make nests inside the boxes, and they generally pour and break down one at a time. The solar lights, they turn on at different times each because they have no linkage between them. They don't know what each other's doing, so they only react to the light around them and what the sensor tells them to do. And the sensors are different in different lights. And because they are fairly cheap Chinese electronics, even two lights of the same in very similar positions, they can be at how slow or how drawn out the evening is. Yeah. They just turn on half an hour difference. And you've got two gateposts and one goes on and half an hour later, the other one still hasn't turned on.
Yeah.
And it's if you want to make an atmospheric garden for evening use, they don't come on until about 11 o'clock at night, but one of them's been on since 9, and they're supposed to be it's just a very poor experience. And I sat there.
Your frustration, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's it.
It's only a little thing in life, but
and we all sit here and say there must be a better way, and that is that's invention, isn't it? There must be a better way to do this. It spawns an idea, and I was working on Arduino projects, and I thought, well, I can use an Arduino to do this, and if I use solar panels to control when the lights go on and off, I can have much more sensitive than a light detecting diode. A single leaf won't destroy your thing, and if I link all the lights together off a one activation, as you can see here, they're all linked together.
Gotcha.
Then I don't need to. Then they won't turn on at different times, and I don't need to have this huge impact of frustration in my life of sitting there with only one gatepost on every night out in my garden, enjoying the long lazy evenings of lockdown, with half my lights on, half my lights off, and one of them out of batteries because a leaf fell on it 2 days ago, and I hadn't noticed the solar panel, which you trip over, you break. It's just all a disaster. Once you get past 3 lights, it starts becoming a very poor light show. So I sat down one day with the Vital sketchbook, always a notepad, and I sketched out a little circuit that could detect and activate a load of lights, and each light could be activated individually, but would only turn on if the light detector was saying it had permission to, and the light detector needs to be adjustable.
Yep.
So you can change it, because these are all things that are missing from standard garden lights.
Yeah, no calibration options.
Exactly. Yep. So I went from a breadboard design And very quickly, this was a 2-week period. You need to prototype. You prototype on a breadboard. Once it works out, you prototype on something a little bit firmer, something a bit more permanent. Because a breadboard, anyone who's ever worked with them knows that, like, as the dog like runs over it, the transistors fly out, and it's just all. I mean, you can see how fragile these are.
Yeah. So just to zoom in a bit there, that for anyone who's not up on electronics, this is what's called a breadboard, and it's peppered with holes, but some of the holes in a certain pattern are connected within the board. So connections that are made alongside each other may, in one direction, be connected together inside, or may not be connected, isolated from each other. So it's a very, very clever little system.
They're very useful for the first step, but very quickly you need to go on to something more permanent. You can see these are these are just, obviously through lockdown, you're looking at using what's sitting on your shelf. I was telling Marcel the other day, I have shelves and shelves of components because every time I need one component, I buy two. One to use and one to store in case it breaks or for another project in the future. And you keep a good stock, you build it up slowly over a long time, just like anything.
I like the way you think, Tom, and I like the way you refer to that as stock. That's really important. It's not junk.
No, that's it.
Stock. My word in the past has been it's resources.
Oh, I like that. And again, I have projects. I don't have daft stuff to fill my time, depending on who you ask.
Yeah. And there's your book of cogitation.
Yes.
That seems to be a key to your method of work. Describe that for us, would you?
Okay, I have this. This sits next to me pretty much 24 hours a day at the moment, especially through lockdown. And it holds all the projects that I'm working on at the times I've been working on them in chronological order.
Let's have a closer look. There we go.
So I can find any project I've been doing, and I can have a look at what I was doing. It notes resistor values or anything for electronics, but it's not only and final nets to make, but also programming code. Basically, I mean, there's probably I could probably look through here and find a design for an interesting mug that I was thinking of, as well as electronics and programming. If it says if it's worth scribbling down, it gets scribbled down, and I can refer back. I never used to use anything like that. I was telling my fiance, I used to just write them all down on paper and leave them next to the project that I was working on. And very quickly you lose it and you just have no idea what's actually happening on anything. You've built a circuit, it's perfect, and then you have no idea what any of it is anymore.
Yeah, you walk away, yeah. Nick chips in a card describing you, and smart. Good skills, Tom. Yes, I echo that. I like that idea of having one book. Very often when I'm working on a project of all sorts of natures, I will need to gen up on something. And I'll really need to know what I'm doing about that particular thing, be it all sorts of stuff, but then kind of as soon as I've completed it, like you're saying, you finish the circuit or whatever it is, I'll walk away and I'll forget a lot of the detail.
Yeah.
So if I need to go back to it, I've got to gen up again. And I like that idea of having one central repository of, I can skim through and look up epoxy mixes at temperature, because at the time I really needed to know what I was doing.
Absolutely. And you never know when you want to make a companion to something you made, and 3 months later you have no idea how many drips of blue you put in there. And very important, simple steps to have more successful projects, I'd say.
That's a really good reference. Yeah.
Notepads, a good central notepad. I also find that there's a spillover quite often. One project, that useful bit of code that I discovered, that works that way. I say discovered, that my friend Josh told me you should do it like this for the coding. Yeah. And 3 months later, rather than phoning him for a completely different project, I can go back into my book and have a look what happened there and repurpose that idea for something else.
And then
just start a new page.
Can you explain that thing again?
Yeah. Why doesn't this work? Like, why doesn't this work is a common question, and it's an important one.
Yeah.
But
good skills. Yeah, I like that. That's something that I'm sure we can all benefit from. Anyone who gets involved in projects.
Yes, projects. Not useless stuff you're wasting your time.
Waste of time.
Over-engineering would be another good phrase for it. Any over-engineering you're involved in, because this is clearly what this is. And as you can see, this is the breadboard been transferred into something that is solid enough for you to drop and not break, but obviously nowhere near enough to be, I like the word deployment, a final deployment.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't put this in the garden. I mean, like, the wood isn't treated for a start. It'll rot. But I can then refer to this to build another version and another version until you get to your final waterproof, solid, upgraded version.
Gotcha.
I try not to dismantle them so I can refer back to them.
What's the little board there?
The little board there. It was an interesting one. I bought some lights, and they worked off is it PWM where Yep.
So you can fade it.
But they worked on a positive and a negative rather than positive ground. So they went positive like 2 volts to negative 2 volts, passing over ground, bouncing backwards and forwards, because the LEDs were wired one way and then one the opposite way.
Yeah.
So 20, 50, 100 times, probably 100,000 times a second, it pulsed it backwards and forwards, so it lit both LEDs, even though one only worked one way and one only worked the other.
Okay. And AC.
Effectively an AC. It's an AC converter. It takes the DC, turns it into an AC that can then power. But with that, you can make the lights flash in sequence and that. I hadn't intended on buying those lights, and it wasn't in my project to have it. So rather than throw those lights out at the start of the project, because I could only light half of them without some very clever Arduino code or building my own circuit, I just ripped that circuit board out, soldered a transistor onto it, connected the transistor to the Arduino, and then the Arduino could operate the button that came originally on the lights. And that button controlled how those lights flashed.
Gotcha.
So anytime a circuit board has a button on it, you can stick a transistor over the top of it and get external control on it.
Yeah. Very interesting.
And but actually in the final version, because I hadn't intended to use it, I used that temporarily, and every time this version booted up, it would send 9 pulses to that button to select. Of course, solid on had to be the 9th button press on those lights. It couldn't be the first one. It had to be the 9th. And of course, when you turn them on, you had to push the button or they just stayed off. So those lights wouldn't even, I know, I was just like, I was going out of my mind, and I was like, keep it simple. Again, my friend Josh, very good at this stuff. He often tells me to keep it simple, and I struggle with that, as you can see. So I just ripped that circuit board out and stuck it straight. Like I just bridged it, the lights to that circuit board to my circuit.
Fair enough.
And I put a little bit of programming in to control it. And from that moment on, with that program always running on boot, I could pretend they were normal lights.
Fair enough. Yeah. A way of bootstrapping yourself. Get something working.
Yeah, that's it. Like,
get there. Yeah.
That's it. A quick fudge, because you're not going to implement that in the next version.
Yeah.
Right. So you can see I'm starting to build up solid components here. And on the top left, that's my second. The first prototype was a breadboard. This is the second. This is now a map of the garden with LEDs in all the places where the lights will be. And with the board below controlling it through the Arduino.
Yes.
And the map of the garden with the LEDs in it, I'm then able to start working on my programming. And there's the light sensor, and I'm running it off a car battery and a solar panel, as you can see up to the right a little bit. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go, car battery there. And The solar panel and the charge controller, I decided that charge controllers can be difficult. They're not really worth building yourself, I personally believe, when off-the-shelf ones are like so cheap and like they're not complicated. And if the Arduino starts having trouble and crashing and it's running your charge controller as well, your code's bad, you're suddenly not controlling your charge either. Like it's a whole can of worms that's not worth it. I'm not one to buy prefab parts very often, but I'd rather not burn my garden down either.
Yeah, after all that effort.
That's it. So just the solar charge controller, and obviously I didn't build the battery or the solar panel. I think those three had to come together as a pack.
We'll give you that.
And I might build one afterwards. I've been thinking about it. There's a page in this about it.
I like it,
but it's only one page. Yeah, that's it. So obviously, I mean, in effect, this is the second prototype, but it's now wired into the Arduino. It has a full map of the garden. It is running off the final power source. It's everything you need to start pinning down your programming skills.
Great.
And the reason I embarked on this project was my last project was becoming incredibly difficult due to a lack of programming skills. And it's something I'm not trained in. To the circuitry I'm trained in. Like programming is something I'm making up as I go along with some help from a couple of friends who are quite good at it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Just a quick comment in there from Nick saying writing things down also uses different parts of the brain. It's a really valuable thing, particularly it's something I've taught when I've been teaching kids. I just want them to write it down, not because I'm going to mark it as tutor, not because perhaps they'll ever use it again, but because that process ingrains it in your head in a different way. Exactly right, Nick. And then Dan also chips in saying, I don't know what he's been smoking. You need to use the Womble 2000 board. It's wombling free and works underground and overground.
But does it work in the loft of a doghouse? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Dan. I think. Yeah. Good.
Excellent. I see. I just put in. This is me learning programming now. That, as I said, that was a suitable prototype to a fully functioning prototype. Therefore, I could move on to the programming because there's no point in building any further prototypes or final models if you can't program it. Yeah. And I mean, programming. I was taught a little bit of programming, and it is flowcharts. All flowcharts.
Good idea. Yeah.
And it took me. It was about halfway through this whole process that I suddenly worked out, like, well, I got told about 15 times by my friend Josh, again, one of the programmers I know, about always a shout out to Josh and Luke, like, especially, and Adam. I spitball with them.
All right.
A code flows through, and the Arduino completes it's 16 megahertz, so it's a lot of processes. If you did one calculation a second yourself, it would take you half a year, if you work 24 hours a day, to do the calculations that the Arduino does in 1 second.
No way.
So it is half a year to 1 second. Wow. And once I figured that out, and I was speaking to you earlier, I learned you can't use, and Josh told me over and over again, you cannot use a delay function in a program. Because the second you say, hold right there and don't do anything for 10 seconds, then that whole computer just freezes for 10 seconds, like it's crashed, but then carries on.
Yeah.
Now, what happens if it suddenly turns day or night while you're telling it just to wait? As soon as it starts back up, it rumbles through everything else that has happened, and it fires through, and everything starts happening again.
Yeah.
But for those 10 seconds, nothing happens at all. And that is not a useful thing in a program, because it should flow, bam, 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 bam. And you're looking to get it to continuously flowing in a loop.
Yeah. And
you interrupt that loop, you have no loop, you therefore lose all values, all data, all sensors, all outputs, just everything goes. And it's something that I personally believe that when you learn Arduino, it is so easy just to skip over that idea. You're like, well, I can just delay this for 10 seconds and that's fine.
Yeah.
And as soon as you stop doing that, and start looking at your flow chart and how to get your flow chart to cycle back to the top and go down the same chain over and over and over again till that chain is completed, rather than just stopping at that chain, and freezing up or getting in a little loop round in a circle.
Yeah.
If you can get the whole code to execute 16 million times a second, it's going to be a lot more responsive than if you tell it to do nothing for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
That was like, I took a video of this because it was like night and day when I actually like got it. And
no pun intended.
Yeah, true. For 10 years, I thought, for 10 years, I thought I understood the concept of computers and programming. I'd studied it to quite a high level and not the program, but the computers and how they work. Yeah. And apparently I just didn't understand it at all. not even slightly. The light bulb went on at the end of the garden and that was it.
Yeah.
And the programming got so much easier. And if I could tell anyone who wants to do any Arduino programming, anything, it is never use delay apart from maybe at boot. Because you can have it freeze up for 10 seconds at the start. And then if it breaks, you can reset it and you've got those 10 seconds to wipe the code, which is useful.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Okay, let's go on to another picture. What have we got?
Yep.
Now, I don't know if you've put these in order. I can't remember, but
this is going to cycle through.
This is starting to look like you're just mucking about. I was going to say it looks pretty, but it does look pretty, but it just looks like you're just having a laugh.
My partner, 10 years ago, we were doing jewellery making. Mm-hmm. And although she has those sort of skills far more than me, I'm not even very good at soldering, as you might be able to see there. I was trying to combine the idea of this here. This is a load of transistors. They're effectively switches that can be controlled by the Arduino to turn different circuits on and off. Each one of those can turn on or off a circuit. You can buy these on a microchip, but microchips are not an interesting thing to look at, and they don't have a power indicator built into them. There's an LED in the middle that tells you if this circuit is working, if it's on. And then each one of those can control a different garden light or string of lights if you string lots together.
Sweet.
And the chips, they don't have the ability to fire the amount of power, the amperage that you need into big strings of lights.
Right.
These, because they are much larger than a single chip, they have the ability to power a light each. In fact, this would be the equivalent to quite a lot of those chips. And as you can see, it's very small. And for those who are sort of watching there, what was on the breadboard and then what was on the wooden board, that big block wooden board, the major working components of that big block wooden board, if you skip to the next one with the resistors on as well, and that's it. That wooden board, that huge wooden board has become this tiny little...
down to that.
Yep, and effectively that is a microchip. And I know a few people had contacted me and said that they were very impressed with the miniaturization. And you see this is somewhat inspired by Iron Man. You can see also the Tesseract. I like a bit of my comic book sort of thing. You know, it's kind of like the reason what looks like an inductor in the middle there. The reason I put that in there is the sort of it's like the heart of Iron Man, effectively there in jewelry wire.
Yeah,
and obviously it glows.
Good fun. Yeah,
and we do a lot of resin casting.
Okay.
In fact, we do a lot of resin casting. We've been doing it several times a week for at least 6-7 months now. So
Excellent.
we're quite into it. And I decided that rather than building a circuit board, which I could miniaturize it, I could have put this on a circuit board. It's not very interesting. It's also not waterproof. You can get a few sprays and stuff like that, but that's not really waterproof in itself.
Yeah.
If you cast your circuit board without a board into resin, you get to choose the shape, choose the design, and then seal it forever. And you'll also, Marcel, you'll know from working with stuff, even when you finish making something that you've made at home, it can quite often be delicate. Things cast in resin are not delicate. I could once. Do we have the next slide for the resin casting?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so there it is.
Cast.
Being cast into the resin, and once that's set, I mean, you could literally you could probably fire it out of a potato cannon and then just plug it straight back in. Durability. When I was younger and I made projects, I seemed to have a lot of the skill and understanding of how to create things that worked, but not much understanding of durability or life expectancy of the products I made.
Gotcha.
They would very a child would pick it up and go, wow, that's amazing, and 3 seconds later it's stacked. Yeah. And when I say child, I mean me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
We can all associate with that. Is that a silicone mold that you're using there to cast in?
It is a silicone mold. It's a shop bought mold. We're working on making our own molds at the moment. Quite difficult, apparently. We've made a few, but they resin, epoxy resin, as people probably know, sticks to everything. And apart from it doesn't apart from silicone, but silicone, unless it's really well injection molded sort of silicone molds, they have little flaws in them if you try and make them yourself, and then they tear apart. Yeah. So to get multi-use molds at the moment, we're still buying them, but we just before I came on, I was trying to make another one, and all I did was break it.
Shame.
Again, durability is everything in these things.
Yeah, sure. Can I put a shout out to a YouTuber, a YouTube channel that I and JP follow quite a lot, and he's a joy, an absolute joy to watch and listen to. But it's the Craftsman. Now that sounds like craftsman, but he ditched the T. By his own admission, he was trying to be cool, the Craftsman. But of course, when people look on YouTube, they always type, the Craftsman, and get loads of other channels. Like, what was like this is a neat idea, this would be quirky. Drop the T because it sounds cool. People don't find his channel. So look up Craftsman, but CRAFSMAN, the Craftsman. And he never appears on screen, but in puppet form, which of course is the Craftsman. But he does a lot of resin casting and silicone mold making and stuff. So that might be of use to you. And
very interesting. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I should be looking him up because the silicone mold making has been we've had a few goes. I've had some good successes with non-silicone molds, one-time use molds, but we've had no. Again, back to durability, we've had no success at repeat uses. Right?
Do you have a vacuum pot by any chance, or a pressure pot?
I do not, but I'm sure I could sort one out.
Fabricable or something. Yeah, I think that can be a very useful addition to casting arsenal. So
I'm desperate for a 3D printer. That would be the because could 3D print and resin into
that's a good idea.
Combined. You see, I like combining things.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right.
What do we got here?
So where are we? Right. So obviously, I've made the controller that allows the Arduino to switch the lights on and off. Mm-hmm. The next bit is telling the Arduino if it's day or night. Gotcha. I built about 16 revisions of this circuit. I ended up having to buy a chip. I forget what it was now. It's a comparator. So you put 2 volts on one pin.
Yep. And
when the solar panel produces more than 2 volts, it then outputs 5 volts on another pin. So it says yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So basically, it just compares 2 values and says yes or no. The values both move. One, I adjust there. At the bottom manually, there, I'm adjusting manually. And the other one, I adjust by changing the amount of light on the solar panels. And you can see it gives you so much control that's 2 solar panels, but only the edge is showing.
Yeah.
And it was able to detect that tiny edge was showing.
Neat.
The solar panels they're much bigger, but they are far more effective than light dependent resistors, the diodes.
Sure, yeah.
Because they have a much bigger surface area. And if you're looking at getting an average of the sky and how bright it is, having that happen in a pinpoint is not a useful, it's what everybody uses. And I just personally, it's one of these things. I felt that for my personal project. Can't judge anyone else's, but for me, I wanted something where if a leaf fell on one of the panels, it wasn't going to affect it. Like,
fair enough.
But unless I wanted it to, like, and that's it. And you can, I could change that. You could you can have it go on when 10% is covered, when 90% is covered, anywhere in between, just with that simple comparator. And I built what's called a NOT gate.
Yeah.
So one diode turns on when it's not on. One LED turns on when it's not saying that they match. And it's really, I need a notebook to describe it, but that's effectively it. And again, with the notepad out, planning that circuit over and over.
Yeah.
But I found one that worked in the end. I was able to build a circuit. I was kind of lucky. I looked at lots of designs online, and I just decided that the only way to understand this properly was to just make the circuit myself, not to copy someone else's, but to do it. And effectively, I think I probably produced something that lots of people have produced: voltage divider, comparator circuit, NOT gate.
Yeah,
job's done.
Perfect.
But it's very effective. And those little solar panels, I have a lot of them in stock. Again, always stock. I have about 6 of them. I was trying to build a nuclear battery last year, and they're left over from that.
Cool.
That's a normal thing to say.
This idea of build it. That's something I learned from a very good friend in around Manchester way, a guy called Britton. When I was doing a lot of work in and around Manchester a few years back, I hit up all the makerspaces and a men's shed that was available in sale while I was there, and Fab Lab and all that sort of stuff. And I made some really good friends in that sort of community, particularly Britton. And one of his axioms of life was, if you want to understand something, build it.
Couldn't agree more.
His prime example for that was he'd made it laser cut out of sort of a green translucent acrylic, probably about so long, and it was a Chinese artifact made originally in jade. And historians, archaeologists looked at it over the years and gone, "Oh, I don't know what that is." It had been found in burial sites and stuff like that. And he was puzzled by it. So he built one. And in the process of building it, he gained an understanding of it, which led him to the belief that it was actually a device for measuring rice, hollow down a core. And I forget the details of that. Maybe Britain can chime in at some point and fill us in on the gaps. But it was really interesting. The adage was, if you want to understand something, build it.
Yeah, that's it. And again, prototyping over and over. You build something, you learn. You rebuild it again, you learn. I'm on, obviously, I think I'm on about the 3rd version of all of these. And you can see, again, I build modularly. I just build the little module that I know needs to do this one thing. And I just build that and rebuild it until I'm happy with it and it works. And all my projects are, you plug modules into modules.
Fair enough, yeah.
And then you can swap out each one. But you'll never truly understand something unless you've built it. If you really want to do it well, build it 5 times in a row. That's a final close up. There it is on the breadboard.
Gotcha.
And turns out you need to blue tack microchips to breadboards. I learned that. I thought it didn't work for ages, and then realised that the chip was just loose. That's on a mount as well. But yeah, that's it. I thought it was. I thought there was something wrong with something, but I couldn't pin down the error. And the microchip's the only bit that I didn't build. That I didn't, and it was just, I think every time there was a gust of wind in the house, and I'm talking just from the door bin thing, it would disconnect, reconnect. A comparator circuit's very sensitive to that sort of thing because it's live comparing.
Yeah.
And this sounds quite weird. This is not a normal circuit diagram you will see, really. People don't draw them like this. But I'm back to building circuits without. Normally, you would design it to go on a board.
Yeah, printed circuit.
If you're designing if you're designing it to go in resin, it has no medium to be mounted onto.
Yeah.
So you've got to design it in a different way, as far as I could see.
Like
You've got to design it
transistor
floating.
ring.
Yeah, exactly. You're effectively designing it floating in midair rather than on a board with connectors.
There's a name for that. I'm trying to. Is it just freeform or something?
Freeform sounds like a good name for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's exactly the term, but yes, it is this self-supporting kind of design. It's really interesting. Quite an arty way of building something.
It was definitely the attempts to make something that I wanted the light detector and the controller, the switching controller, to be part of the garden lights. Not they should actually form part of the garden, not be hidden in a box. Which is ironic because I hid that one in the box in the end because I wired the yellow for day and the blue for night LEDs backwards. So it lights up orange at night and blue in the day, which is definitely not the. I mean, it doesn't bother you, but it bothers. Luckily, because I designed modularly, I can just rebuild it and just unplug that one and plug the other one in.
Yeah,
and that will be the plan. So if we fire on and there it is sitting in resin.
Gotcha.
That scribble on a page with the drawing of the sort of square microchip with all the leads coming off it becomes this. Super. The purple lead goes to the solar panel. The red lead powers it. The bottom right lead is the negative for the circuit. And the yellow lead, that goes high when it's night. It should be day. That's what I'm saying, it's backwards. And the blue lead, that goes high when it's it should go higher. I mean, it gains 5 volts when it's night.
Gotcha.
I wanted the Arduino to never have an indecisive moment. I wanted to be able to program it to be able to tell if day and night were swapping back quickly.
Yep.
And be able to pick up on the fact that dusk had arrived.
Yep.
So this is one side's a day circuit, one side's a night circuit. Together, they become a dusk sensor as well.
Yep.
It becomes a third function.
Yep.
And that was the idea behind all of that. But it came out very nice in the resin. You see blue on one side, orange on the other. Just a shame the LEDs were backwards. You live and learn.
Close.
You can't test that circuit in advance because it's all so incredibly difficult to hold. Like you're trying to lower it into a mold. And I also learned that you can't put variable resistors into resin very well because they're not waterproof.
Okay, yeah. How did you learn that, Tom?
By putting that, inside they have a disc that rotates like that.
That's right.
The resin comes to there, and as you turn the wiper, you can feel it scrape against the resin. Oh, no. And the only reason it didn't set is because I spent about 12 hours while that resin was setting. And bear in mind, we do resin at night before we go to bed, just twisting it to make a trench, so it didn't I realised my mistake almost instantly, and I was. I just looked at it. I thought, "There's a hole in that. That's not waterproof." I'm done. Quick Google online, found out that waterproof variable resistors aren't particularly potentiometers are particularly easily available, and realised I had to find a plan. And that was my plan. Just sit there and twist it with this slowly setting goop right below my hand.
Oh, bother.
For hours. It was kind of like making ice cream.
Maybe the option would be to bung up the holes with something.
Glue. This is
and then pop the whole thing in epoxy, but it's sealed at least to keep the epoxy out.
I think next time I will I will fill it with glue gun and I will set the whole thing in epoxy before I then set it in the epoxy for the circuit.
Fair enough.
To ensure, because there's no point in doing all of that and then finding out it leaked.
That's right. Yes, at least like that, you can test it. It is sealed. Yeah.
Well, you see all this planning, all this testing, and I still managed to set the almost stick that and put the LEDs backwards, all in one circuit.
Yeah.
It goes to show, no matter how hard you plan and no matter how many prototypes you make, you better be paying attention when you make the last one.
Failure is always an option.
I like that. Yes, it is.
It's just probably quite likely as well.
Yeah, I think you might. And then everybody needs Lego. obviously we saw that paper board that I made to her, like with all the LEDs in it. That is not a 3D representation of the garden. It's good for basic programming. It doesn't give you an idea. If anyone remembers what the garden looked like, that is a pretty solid representation. So before wiring it all in my garden and spending 5 years doing that to realize, and burying all the wires to realize that I wasn't ready yet, I built a model of the garden that was better than a bit of paper or a bit of cardboard.
Yep.
And I wired the whole thing up as if I was deploying it outside. And that allowed me to test final versions of the switches, the light detectors, all completely in situ.
Cool.
And to the point where I could take this out into the garden and place it where it would finally live.
Yep.
But instead of wiring the garden lights to it, I have the model wired to it. I think if you jump straight forwards, there's the final result of. It's had a few names. I like Tesseract.
Okay.
Because it's a blue glowing cube, but it does have the Iron Man sort of heart to it, and it definitely resembles a flux. Oh, do you know what? I might design the next one as a flux capacitor. I'm sitting here. I've got all the parts like in front of me to rebuild this for the fourth time. Yeah. Like in a new design, and a flux capacitor might be the way forwards. Thank you.
Oh, that was looking nice.
There's a few
about a pressure pot or vacuum chamber combined, possibly. You've got a lot of micro bubbles there that would deal with that, wouldn't it? It's nice actually diffusing.
Yes,
it's nice, but
I had hoped it would look more. I had hoped the bubbles actually came out too small to be to be a really good effect. But too many to it just didn't. Well, we cast crystal clear things all the time, really well. We've got we actually use heat to remove the bubbles. Two-step process: heat the resin to about 30 or 40 degrees before you pour it, and nearly all the bubbles rise out.
Oh, sweet.
And then take a blowtorch because they've risen to the top, and run a blowtorch over it, and it just clears the whole lot off.
I've seen somebody doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was of the hope that we would get a interesting effect with the bubbles, but actually, again, this is why I want to rebuild this one. I wasn't happy with those.
I do like it actually. I like that sort of frosting.
Yeah, but it's just not quite how it could have been. So much more with the same bubble. Do you know what I mean? Like it could have looked like it was creating the bubbles as it's powering, and it never did. It's, like something volatile in it, but instead it just looked bubbly. I called it an aero when it came out. I was like, I've made an aero. Whereas, I was hoping for nuclear reactor, and instead I made a chocolate bar.
It has got a bubbly nuclear reactor about it. I see what you're aiming for. But
it's that close, but missed the mark. But then again, that's only the fourth version of it, so Back to wiring the Lego garden. At the front, those two little cups, as they were, like sideways cups, they are sensors.
PIR, aren't they?
Yeah. What's the phrase they like? Human body detectors. Yeah. Ooh. They read. They're. I always thought movement detectors were what was used in security lights up until I started this project. I've never really researched it. Turns out they actually detect heat.
Yes.
So I tested this. I got a hot water bottle. Yeah, I got a hot water bottle and a stick, and I stood behind one, and I left the hot water bottle empty, and I poked it with the stick. Nothing happened. I filled the hot water bottle up. I poked it with the stick again, and they activated. I'm not joking.
Scientific testing.
Yeah, well, I'm very, very lucky that my fiance also has a scientific degree, because otherwise she would probably have me taken away. As she walks in the door and I'm standing there with a stick poking a hot water bottle going, look, it's doing it.
Okay, they'll be here soon.
Yes. I'm very lucky she finds it as interesting. We also had a good game with that. We tried to blind them with lasers and heat and different things. We were interested in ways to defeat them. But it turns out they are incredibly robust. They are very, very well built. I mean, there is no way to apart from an infrared laser that could heat that cavity to human body, and that would just turn them on.
Yeah.
And laser cooling isn't quite here yet. So you can't actually wrap yourself in tinfoil, don't work.
Did you try that?
No, I didn't. But I was fairly confident that it might work for a second. No, but I did try the hot water bottle. Yep.
Nick rightly says, wow. Alongside his comment that says men are brilliantly useless. And Dan says, lovely project. Just looking at the icons, smiley face, thumbs up.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
Thank you. Obviously, the gate sensors, the idea is that they get mounted on the front and the side of the doghouse, and they are able to detect when someone arrives in the garden and when someone leaves. And if the program allows, because it hasn't flashed in, like the lights haven't flashed in a while, I don't like them flashing every 10 seconds.
No.
But every half an hour when someone arrives, or any time after that where it's been that limit's passed.
Yep.
They will flash a little sequence, and there's a little light that says welcome and stuff like that.
Cute.
And they also turn the lights off early in the winter if no one's using the garden.
Perfect.
Because they can detect whenever you're using it.
Perfect.
And you start to see we're coming together here. Here's the gate sensors. There's a little welcome sequence.
Yeah.
And that's it. And at this point,
down the path.
Sorry,
Very good.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the back sensor. I obviously had to put a walk time in. They guide you down like a runway light out the door as well. Very cool. That would be very useful after a few beers and a barbecue in the summer. How do I get out? Just follow the what does it they say in the airplane? The emergency exit lights will. Oh yeah, the taxi lights. The emergency exit lights will illuminate your path to the exit. Like, but and there was also cool. I found. Obviously, in the programming at this point, we needed to put in some things. So you need a delay time, because if someone walks through the front gate, it can't immediately activate the back gate sensors to say goodbye as they arrive.
Yeah.
So you pair the two gates together, and it's sort of able to work out if someone's arriving, and therefore stop it playing the leaving sequence.
Great.
For the next, say, 2 minutes. So if someone arrives and then someone leaves 2 minutes later, it will welcome the person arriving. It will say goodbye to the person leaving, but it won't welcome the person leaving. Or you see what I mean?
Yes, I got it.
But this was days and days of computer programming and many hours on the phone. Again, mostly to my friend Joshua, who doesn't actually program Arduinos for a living or anything like that. So like maybe a little out of his depth. But do you know what? He stepped up, and I think he was learning it alongside me. But with a heavy background in computer programming, it was probably a little bit easier for him.
That is the nice thing with this sort of stuff, is that once you understand the principles of logic and the methods in computer programming, you can actually repurpose them and apply them somewhere else. Relatively.
I think he probably twinged, as you said, relatively easily. I think I was probably asking quite a lot for him, but he was. He seemed very happy with to be involved, and I loved it. Obviously, Lego garden built, all programming done, in situ test outside. The Lego garden has resistors in it as well to try and simulate the draw of the actual lights outside. So it's a full scale mock-up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Trying to, I didn't get it exactly, but it draws a lot more amperage than actually like that should, without burning anything down.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been a bit sort of stress tested.
Yes, exactly, because you don't want to install it outside and find it doesn't. I actually, it has that's a 7 amp hour battery, but I can draw up to 10 amps straight out of it at once through two separate regulators. Okay. And I decided to go way over capacity, because I think one of the next, I don't know if I included the video, but I'm also able, I obviously didn't, I'm also able to power a Google Home Mini off it.
Okay. So
you can have internet radio and Hey Google in the garden powered from this same circuits.
Yeah.
And I haven't managed to integrate Hey Google and the Arduino yet. I mean, there's only a page in the book about that. But I think I'm probably going to be able to make some sort of dismantle a smart plug.
Is your Google just asking what you're asking because you've just said, "Hey Google"?
Oh no, it missed me. It missed me.
I heard something.
Bob it. Oh, sorry. Apparently the dog did too. So, yeah, there's ones in every single. They're everywhere. I mean, the fact that I'm trying to install one in a doghouse tells you how many we have in the house. Yeah. And there's one in every TV as well. It has control over our entire lives. If Google rises up, they can literally control every plug, every TV, everything in our house. Like, I can hear it somewhere.
They start talking to each other around the house.
Yeah, that's it. That's when they start to learn. Like when they can teach each other, then we're in trouble. But so I think dismantling a smart plug is coming, because you only need to be able to, even just being able to get a single high or low input to an Arduino pin from a smart plug is enough to start gaining control over the programming. Yeah. Especially if you can blip it 3 times or twice, you can start effectively kind of like binary, but more like Morse code, I'm thinking. Exactly. Program the Arduino to understand a bit of Morse code from the plug, and suddenly you got full control over all your garden lights from Hey Google that lives in your doghouse. This is a very normal thing.
Honest.
Oh God, she's telling us about dog houses. She's just told us about a book about dog houses. At least they're quite funny.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm going to interject here a second, Tom, because we've run longer than longer than I anticipated for our first half. So I'm going to suggest, because normally on SHEDcast, we recognise that when you get a bunch of blokes sitting around together, it's only a certain amount of time before everyone goes, "Oh, put kettle on, I need a wee." So we're going to take a short 5 to 10 or 15 minute break. What is it? 5 minutes? 3 minutes? 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes, charge your mug, get another biscuit, and we'll see you back here in a mo. Is that all right?
Sounds perfect.
Take a break, fellas. We'll see you back here in 5. Alrighty then, welcome back.
Do I need to clap again?
All, refreshed yourself.
Yeah, that was about apparently the video. No, that was about 10 seconds off.
Really? Oh, you're spot on. You're bang on. But am I drifted? Is it a drift?
Yeah, but it will sort itself out in a second, I think. Last time it ironed out in the first minute. So, yeah. Hey, technology, who knows anything about that?
Absolutely, yeah. In the background, Dan has chipped in, diodes are a girl's best friend.
They are.
Fair play. And electronic jewellery, that's something for you and the fiance to play with. Is your fiance called Helen by any chance?
No, Catherine.
Okay. Catherine. Hello, Catherine. The reason I ask Helen is that Helen Foxon has chipped in on Facebook.
That would be my mother.
She put up the angry icon. So sorry, Helen. I'm very sorry. Whatever it is that has rattled your cage.
I think it might just be a misclick. I think it would say we're safe to. My mother is lovely. I have to say that, but I also mean it. So I think a misclick is likely to be maybe just waking the screen as we were back or something. Hopefully not. But I better phone her after this and make sure. Yeah.
Mother, what's up? Yeah, great. Okay. Now,
what have I done is the question.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yes. At which point, will she likely call you Thomas?
I think it's safe to say.
Full name.
Yes.
So I've recharged my mug. This week, this is a regular thing. We talk about what mugs we're flying. Now, can you tell me, is it Goofy or is it Pluto? I think it's Goofy.
I would have said Goofy, but like I wouldn't consider myself to be an absolute expert. Maybe someone can chime in.
Yeah, I'm hoping somebody will. But I'm flying Swilk, just water and milk, which is kind of nice. And this week I'm flying.
Was that from Disneyland by any chance?
It is a Disney mug, but I don't know where it came from.
It's only because I had the matching mug. I recognised the curves inwards from Disneyland. But
it's not camera distortion, no. And I'm flying OT Nobblies, not Nibblies. OT Nobblies. Oat Nobblies as biscuit. And I'm still very judiciously working my way through a Bourneville dark chocolate orange. That finger there, dark chocolate orange, or highly recommended. It's got orange like peel bits.
Crystals, is it?
Not crystals, it's like sort of zest. In fact, I can't talk about it and not test. And I'd love to share some with you, Tom. But I can't.
I run my entire creation is run off Dr. Pepper. Everything, it's coffee in the morning and then just quantities. Traditional tech sort of thing is to drink far too much soda, as we all know, like cups of tea for woodwork, stuff like that. More techie computer programming is always many, many cans of soda, I believe. And it's Dr. Pepper forever for me. Like since the day I tried it at like 10 years old, I've never left it alone. Like,
well, what do you know? Okay. Shall we dive way, way back in? We are dans le jardin. And I think the next slide, which is a good place to stop, was this item here. Now,
okay.
I fear that some people in the background may be wondering, we keep talking about Arduino. What on earth is an Arduino? Would you like to hazard an attempt on that challenge?
Absolutely. An Arduino, I mean, like without stepping into the street too much, about 20 years ago, you started being able to program microprocessor chips from your PC. I remember like St. Sampson's School, the school I went to, finally got one like where they could plug in and program a chip. And then you'd mount that chip to a board once you'd programmed it. The Arduino is the evolution of that into the modern times. What it is it is a programmable chip that's already mounted on a board with a load of pinouts. And you can effectively turn on and off all these individual pins, and you can ask them to either have a look if they're getting fed some power, or they can give out some power to something else. And you can write a computer program. I do it all on my phone. So I write a computer program on my phone, and then I just take one of these leads. I plug my phone into one side. I plug that board into the other. And just like 20 years ago at school when you could program a single microchip, I can program the microchip on that to do my bidding. That's the best way to put it.
That's very cool.
And it behaves in a loop, like I was saying about before. 16 million times a second, it runs this program, and then it starts again. And it'll run 16 million calculations, and it'll start again, or however many you give it. It just loops round and round and round and round. And that's where the flowcharts before came in. Perfect. So you come up with a flowchart, and we've all used Excel, I'm sure, where you say, if this cell is this, do this. If it's not, don't, or do this instead, or do nothing.
Logic
and you effectively, you write a program like that. And you just have to think, right, I have a gate sensor. It's plugged into here. If the gate sensor is tripped, then make the light sequence flash. Yep. And this is the light sequence. The light sequence is to make like 1, 2, 3, and 4 come on one after the other. And you just get it to do that. And it just tests over and over again, 16 million times a second. It tests all these criteria you give it and then it runs through your flowchart. Has this happened? Yes. Right, do this. Has this happened? No. Well, then do this instead. And back to the start, down, back to the start, down. And they are fantastic. They are, for electronics, I learned to do circuit boards and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
This effectively allows me to, I mean, it would take me years to design the circuit board to do what I can program this thing to do in seconds.
Yeah,
it's incredible. I have talking about my shelf. I mean, I have another 4 sitting on the shelf unopened in boxes. Like they're incredibly cheap as well. What might have cost the school £10,000 20 years ago cost me £10. Like, and this is a mega. It's a particularly big one. It has 1 million little pin outs. You can see them there everywhere. Like, and you can buy a slightly smaller one for £8 instead of 10.
Yeah,
but yeah, does that kind of cover it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good answer. Yeah, yeah. How long ago did you start getting into them?
I tend to dip in and out of them depending. Like every project seems like it's a good idea to have an Arduino because it's so easy like that.
That's a bit like every problem seems like a nail when you've got a hammer in your hand.
Yes, that's it. So I try not to move away from designing like the light circuit that I built, like we saw earlier.
Yeah,
I try not to move away from designing them if it's so easy. I could just get the Arduino and just offload it all, get that to do it. But I try not to. I try to build the circuit still, like. But effectively, it's just replacing. Yeah, it's a programmable circuit that you don't have to solder.
Yeah, very, very cool. I must admit, I did GCSE electronics, and in all fairness to my teacher, David, if you're out there, thank you. I didn't learn a huge amount. It encouraged me, but I even though I passed with a C at GCSE level, my actual grasp was pretty low. And it took me a long time to get back into electronics when Arduinos were really just sort of gaining ground, popularity. Actually, the first one I had was one of the first boards that had USB on it. Before that, they had a serial port, a D9 serial port, and it got me back into electronics. And because yes, it's a really quick way of you can program something and kind of it's all just logic level stuff. So 5 volts, 0 volts. Does it work? Does it not work? Digital. But that's also getting me back into sort of analog electronics, like some of your sort of circular ring, your tesseract thing with the transistors, all that stuff. I'm learning a lot of that because of this. It's really useful.
I tend to, just me personally, like whenever I do analog electronics, I tend to always accidentally make very low logic level digital circuits every time, because a transistor, like it's either on or off and it's at 0.7 volts. So actually a transistor is a digital device with a threshold of 0.7 volts, rather than, even though it's an analog device, you can easily design the circuit to be digital, and circuits get so much easier when they're digital. Like, yeah,
really nifty.
I probably lost about 3 people there. I'm sorry. Like,
no, about 7.
I meant all but 3.
All but 3.
Yeah, all but 3 people, and I was one of them. I'm counting myself like as one of them.
I lost 3 people, and I'm one of them.
Yeah.
So yes, you do have a very understanding fiance. I take it this is the living room carpet.
I think my fiance likes. I'm a deadline orientated person. I tend to force myself, like sort of 2 weeks for a project that's not like monumentally difficult, and if it's not done in 2 weeks, it needs to be put away till I know more.
Okay.
And so this took over our entire house for 2 weeks because that's the living room carpet. But I mean, we haven't got the full scale wires there, but there are. I mean, I'm running 30 foot of cables or some of these things because they're getting buried in the grass.
Yeah.
And then they have to make it all the way from the light at the end of the garden up and then through the loft into the loft of a doghouse. That's not even like, it's not even inside the gate. Like, so it's effectively running the full length of the garden and then a little bit more.
Excellent.
And so there were cables everywhere. We had a slight mishap, again, talking about robustness. We had a slight mishap where the dog was excited and running around the room, and it just tore straight across the top of everything. And I had to do a full rebuild. Because somewhere a single point had got grounded. And if you've grounded a point and it's a serious one, it's actually very difficult to anyone who sat there with a multimeter.
Yeah.
The only way to find the grounding, you have to disconnect all the parts of the circuit to be able to find the grounding. And at that point, you might as well throw away the multimeter, rip everything apart and rebuild it.
Start again. Yeah.
Because like they're not like house electronics where it's all separate fuses. All of this is wired to a single common ground. Therefore, you can't actually find that. Like it's, and I don't. I know every resistor value, but I'm not adding them up in my head and like testing. When you design a circuit board, you have test points to check each module of it is working. Yeah. In a project like this, although it is modular, if something serious has gone wrong and something's grounded and you have no idea where it is, there aren't any test points you can check because there's a common ground, so they're all linked together. Like, it's just, like it was an absolute. Yeah. But sticking to my deadline, I think I pulled 2 full all-nighters to get this done inside of 2 weeks. Yeah, well, not the same, not one after the other, luckily. And you see, I'm also being very careful there because the solar panels are upside down, because there's a very important rule with working with solar, and that is don't have the charge controller plugged into the solar panels and not the battery, because you're putting power into it, and you're already making a full circuit without the battery, but you're putting power in it that has nowhere really to go. So you're effectively like grounding your power to nothing. Like, if that makes
short circuit kind of.
That's it. You certainly don't want to walk back in the room after popping to the loo and for a cup of tea to find your solar panels are getting full sun straight into the charge controller and it's got nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the photos look like that if I've got any like concerns that the circuit isn't correct.
Good thinking. That's good advice. Otherwise you might find a solar charge controller shaped hollow in your carpet. Yeah,
rather than just some solder burns. There are a few solder burns in our carpet. Yeah.
So this is starting to look pretty.
Yep, we're starting to see we're no longer on Lego models. We're no longer on breadboards. We're no longer at any points apart from like the final phase ready for deployment. All the different modules there. You've got the Arduino there in the center in the box. The cables are starting to get neat. I'm not really very neat with the cables, but if you look at the actual these solar lights as well, obviously, like, I don't know if anyone's a Red Dwarf fan, but there's a point where Rimmer gets upgraded to hard light, and the first thing the guy does is he takes his light beacon, opens it up, and just pulls all of the wires out of it, and he's just like, well, this is there, and then just like drops one other thing in, puts it, and that's it, done. That's the upgrade. Okay. Every time I buy a solar light, the very first thing I do is crack it open and just start yanking everything, because I don't need it. It's the box I'm interested in, effectively.
Yeah, sure.
And I just start like ripping everything out of it. Like, so I go to the shop, buy a beautiful solar light, and then just start yanking it all apart. Not even carefully. But you can see the Arduino there. All the pins out. The wires are starting to get neat. They're becoming color coded.
Yeah.
You don't see the notepad there, but the color coding is written down. There's a table effectively with the color of the wires, what pin they connect to, and what color they connect to in the tesseract, and then what light they connect to on the way out. It's very difficult with so much wiring. I mean, I'm sure I feel for like house electricians and that it must be incredibly difficult.
Yeah, when they're all grey. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I know when we had a problem with our wiring, he was like, "Oh yeah, no problems," and he pulled off one plug, and he's like, "No," and then I like popped out the room for a minute, came back, and every single plug's hanging off the wall, and he's like, "I don't know where it is." I'm just like,
Great.
Yeah, and I try to avoid that. Good color coding, good notes, but there's still a certain amount of that in every project.
Well, this is starting to up the complexity level, so I can appreciate why you need to color code stuff.
And now, because obviously you get a small amount of internal resistance with long lengths of wire, and some of these lights, these long chains, I'm only talking about 20 ohm resistors, stuff like that. So for the full scale model, I'm looking at actually having the loops of wire that are the full length for the garden inside the house to just test them. Because I know it doesn't seem that important to a lot of people. You can see the book there on the left with all the, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's probably wiring notes in there.
Let's have a look.
But
a little bit.
Circuit diagrams, with wires like that, you don't want your left fence to be one brightness and your right fence to be another brightness, because your left fence plugs in at half the distance to your right. And obviously I for this project, because it's based in 12 volts, which is a car battery, all the wiring is just effectively car wiring. It's very, very cheap because it's mass produced, and it's very, very safe because there is huge regulations around it. So working from a 12 volt circuit works really, really well to then buy car parts. It also means if you want to upgrade, add USB ports and stuff like that, you can dive straight in and buy one designed for a car.
Sweet. Nice.
Yeah, that's it. But a lot of wiring. And then
it went quite nicely.
It did. Like very, very, everything very carefully taped like into loops. So it can effectively, I like the word deployed, take it outside, you pick up one, you cut that loop, all the others are still in their tidy packs. You stretch it out, you run the cable, and then you get the next one. And then you're only working with a single thing at a time, not a spaghetti junction. Again, a modular design, like individual parts that plug together rather than something that's all hardwired into one huge complicated circuit.
I can see why you've had to be very organized on that front.
Yep. And then this is me actually fitting it into the garden. I buried garden lights quite a while ago, and wasn't happy with the fact that they were all turning on at different times, which is what started this. So I already had wires under the ground, but just short wires to the solar panels. So the first thing I did, and this was the hardest bit of the entire project, I had to walk outside and pick all the solar lights that I hadn't disconnected yet, and know that it was make or break time. These are the ones that I couldn't test because they were buried in the ground and stuff like that. And I'd been outside with I went outside with a 5 volt supply and a barrage of resistors, cut all the wires, and just connected the 5 volt supply to find the correct brightness level for each individual light, and then fix those resistors into the circuit, and then took them outside and wired them into the ground. So I've probably got more underground wiring in my garden than there is under our houses.
I also important off-on switch.
Yep. And I learned very quickly that I did not have a drill bit. I did not have the right size drill for that on-off switch, as you can see. So the solution to everything in that situation is to cut a great big hole and then fill it full of glue gun glue. And that's what I did. I just cut a giant hole, stuck that in, and then just glued it in position. Problem solved. You've never. There are only other 2 tools that, if anyone's buying anyone else any tools or buying tools for themselves, there's only 2 that you ever need. And that's the one you're missing and the one that's just a little bit different size to the one you've got.
Yeah.
And this was one of these situations. I was missing the right size drill, but I had the one that was just a little bit too big. Next to it is the gate sensor.
Just to interject, if I may.
Yeah.
Hot glue guns is one of those funny things that I've had quite a number of conversations with people, I would say a good number of older guys who've either heard of them and never used them, or never heard of them at all. And it's really surprised me because I've sort of grown up with hot glue guns.
Yeah.
And they are a very useful thing. Whilst they're not the silver bullet for every situation, they are a very clever, particularly for short-term sort of, I just need that to stay there. And semi-long
waterproofing.
And waterproofing.
I'd say waterproof. But what obviously needs to happen over this is that I need to get the right size drill, cut a faceplate, drill that hole and stick it straight over that so it's actually pretty.
Yeah.
But that will still have waterproofed the hole and the switch for foreseeable future. Like, as long as I put a nice fascia on it, a nice fascia on everything solves everything. It doesn't matter how big a hole you hack as long as you put something nice over it.
I knew a girl like that once. Nice fascia.
Obviously, yep. And it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter how neat your wiring diagram is when you actually fit it and you have to condense a huge number of different colored, different wires going in all different directions into one place. I mean, you can see at the side, I started off trying to be very neat. And then I realized that these wires needed to go to the on-off switch to the gate sensors. And because they'd been made inside, none of them are actually the correct. I overlengthed them.
Okay, yeah.
So I had the flexibility to deploy this in places that I decided was good. I'd done enough measuring at that point. I was out of measuring time, and I just decided to start fitting overlengths of wire to everything that, we're talking 2 feet instead of 1 foot, not like not 8 feet instead of 1. And as I finished fitting this, I discovered that it was about to rain. So, and as you can see, that roof of the doghouse, it's there might be a little gap in it. This is looking up into the roof. There were a couple of, considering it was made out of a bin shed in one day with no design. Yeah, there's just a couple of little gaps that might have needed a bit of attention, possibly some hot glue, and to solve that, while I came up with a quick, I mean, it hadn't rained in 40 days. What was the chance that the day I fitted this outside, it was suddenly going to pour with rain? Yeah. So even though I'd waterproofed everything, when it rains in Scotland, it rains. It doesn't matter. You go out in a rain jacket and you come home soaked every time. It just, I believe the words ingress, the driving wind and rain. And so everything got wrapped in a bin sack temporarily in an emergency problem. That's what's going on there with all that. Just wrapped in cut up a bin sack, wrapped it round everything that wasn't 100% waterproof, taped it on, and ran to B&Q, because I think the next slide is that's me taking a photo of it from upstairs to show that it's all fitted.
Sweet.
And then, but waterproofing is still a major concern. So ran to B&Q, £20 later for this is what's the roofing felt called?
Rubberoid. Asphalt. Not asphalt. Rubberoid.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there you go. But they had one that was already cut into the shape of tiles, which I thought was quite neat.
Civilized.
And as I spoke to you the other day, halfway through fitting it, I realised that fitting a roof under solar panels that have already been secured is a little bit of a difficult process, which was just stupid. But in my defence, it was really hard. I don't know. I have no defence. I'm an idiot. Yeah, that's it. I think I'd been up for 24 hours at this point trying to get the deployment done properly.
That's
you'll be able to see in the front. Yeah, I was about to say that tesseract cube.
Sweet.
It sticks out about 1 centimetre out the front, so you can see that it's 3D and look through the side of it as well.
Ooh.
And just above it is the gate sensor that I was speaking about.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And they've been the front cap's been removed, and the front cap has been sunk flush into the wood. So the actual sensor is behind through a tiny little peephole.
Yep.
And then a large hole's been drilled in the front, but only halfway through the wood to sit the cap inside it. And then I just cut off the excess.
Yeah.
And it turns out they're incredibly good in that. I went for a random position. You can always fill paint and reposition if worst comes to the worst.
Yeah.
One on the front, one on the side. And I think they're accurate to 7 meters, but they are adjustable as well.
Yeah, great.
I've been very impressed with them. If anyone's looking at them, they're human body detectors, and they're about £2 each.
Yeah.
And they are 100% reliable, from what I can work out.
Yeah, very cool.
Well, in the short term, anyway. Yeah, that's it. I have been testing them, and I've been running this in the house it's been like the Northern Lights. Every time we turn the lights off at night, everything comes back on. Like, I think it was probably brighter in our living room when we turned the lights off and went to bed than before. Like, but again, very, 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 very forgiving and understanding fiance required for a project.
And I wonder what the neighbours thought.
Have
the neighbours seen it in action yet?
We have a little difficulty with the neighbours. Like they have a giant floodlight that activates every time I walk into my garden.
Oh, great! That
floods our entire garden. It doesn't activate while I'm in the garden, just while I go into the garden.
Okay.
And like, unfortunately, we've had to contact the council because it is against the law to have giant motion sensing floodlights on other people's property. But like,
oh really? Okay.
Well, I spoke to them calmly about it, and we're not going to get into it. They screamed, "It's for security," and slammed the door effectively. Like the security to know I'm in my garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Securely in your garden. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And it's so no one breaks into our garden as well. Apparently, it's a good thing for us.
Great.
Despite the fact that I already have motion sensors in our garden and a dog.
Well, you can say the same to them when you fit the laser cannons. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been thinking about building a tennis ball launcher the dog can operate. So she'll be out there all day firing. Yeah, I thought I've got some notes for that. As my key phrase, I've got some notes like, how did that possibly get swung round and end up firing through your window?
No. Oh my!
Right, no. Yeah, but this is the slide I'd asked you to put in at the end because it talks about prototyping, and it's from breadboard to wooden board to Lego board to final deployment. I've actually built this project 4 separate times in the space of 2 weeks,
right?
And the benefit that has had to me in not only learning but the evolution. I recoded it about 50 times, but like the actual hardware was rebuilt 4 times in a row, like over the space of 2 weeks. And the difference I think that makes to the durability in the finished products is good. Very, very, very efficient.
We can see that from the journey, as you've described it to us, that you've found something, you've found a snag. The next iteration, you've refined it, and you've refined it again. Iteration, whenever I've been doing work with kids, that's something that over the last few years, but increasingly so, I find to be a really important thing to drum home to kids particularly.
I think
very often at school is about, right, here's a challenge, whether it's writing an essay or a maths problem or something creative. Here's a problem, go. And then that first answer that comes back, we mark that, and then that's your mark.
Yeah.
And there's this is a carte blanche. Shoot me down in flames. Go ahead. But it's a bit of a generalization. But there is a tendency to take the first response without a process of reflection and then iteration. I think that iteration is so vital. Anything good that is ever made or designed has gone through a process of iteration, and therefore I strongly believe that needs to be taught and taught well.
Yep, I had very little. To be honest, I think I had no interest in, if I was going to make something, I had an interest in making it once and making it good. And it has taken me many, many years to realize, like the day-night sensor, that needed rebuilt about 8 times.
Yeah.
And now it functions beautifully. And at the start, it didn't work at all. And I would have slaved over that same start one forever, trying to flog a dead horse, as it were, like trying to force that design into functioning correctly. And of course, it never would have.
Yeah.
And I was very, very much like that. It's only in the last few years that I've accepted that you've actually, if you want to make something, it's not the effort of making it, it's the effort of making it 3 times. Yeah. And when you start making something, you need to accept that there's no point in polishing the first product, because you're going to make it twice more before it's any good. And yeah, that's
I'll put my hands up and say that even now I still rile against failure. People very philosophically talk about, failure is an important part of the learning process, and I get it. I don't embrace it that easily, to be honest.
It's incredibly frustrating for a start.
I made a chicken feeder in the last week to take a glass bottle, so it's sort of a tripod type thing, and I was pretty ticked off with myself that it didn't fit in exactly the first time.
To feed chickens, not to eat chicken with. Sorry, I've just realized when you said that, I had this this idea of an automatic chicken barbecue, just feeds you chicken. Like I was like this, I thought I was weird with the solar lights.
That's what I call a chicken feeder. Yeah, very good. I must admit, in a way, I could have gone back and 3D printed a second version, but with the judicious application of boiling water to thermoform the top rings, the bottle would fit snugly, and a little bit of super glue in the right place, it works. And I will continue to use it until it fails properly in use, and then I will go back and remake it. But yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that should be taught. And I'm talking to myself as well, that I tend to want to make the finished thing from the get-go.
I wonder how easy that is to, on the other side of that, how easy it is to teach because that's not it's not a fact, it's an experience almost. It's very difficult to tell someone you need to make that 3 times before it will be any good. But as you get older and you make more and more things, you learn the truth of that. And I think it's I think you need I agree with you completely, but I think it's very hard to teach someone that you've got to mess it up twice to get it right. Without letting them mess it up twice and then getting it right the third time. The taste of success provides a reward that replaces the anguish from the first 2 not working. And you remember that when you start your next project. It becomes ingrained in with you.
Plus the fact it hones your skills. So as you go on, you're less likely to be making those same mistakes. You might make new mistakes, but actually your process of iteration gets shortened because of your past experience.
I made a walking stick a few years ago, and it's got a slogan painted all the way down it, and it says every solution starts with a problem. And it's in the same vein, like every time you've got a problem, that's how you're getting your solution, and that's why your final solution works, because you had these problems along the way. And
that's a nice philosophical way to round things off, isn't it?
I think so. I would say you probably post a link. I have a huge amount of public albums on Facebook. I have no benefit if anyone looks or not, so not really selling myself in that way. But I have a large number of public Facebook albums that just involve things that I've built. Okay. And you're welcome to post a link to that, or if you want, or people.
How can people find you then?
Somehow
on Facebook?
Thomas Foxon. I think it's Facebook.com/. facebook.com/foxon.co.uk as my little Facebook URL. In fact, I'm
Gotcha.
99% sure that's yep. But if you look me up, people are welcome to flick through. They'll see the rest of the photos from the solar build. They'll see laser guitars and
we
poorly constructed second laser guitars, like cardboard laser guitars. But and they see all of that stuff, especially people who are interested in Arduino stuff. I'm not an expert in Arduino. I mean, I only started really seriously understanding it and self-teaching myself 6 weeks ago to get a really good grasp of it.
Great.
But people are welcome to look, and also if they have any ideas on how to make this second laser guitar work, like if anyone's ever done that before or knows how to make synthesizers out of Arduinos, I'd be very interested in hearing from them.
Yes, so something you'd mentioned earlier was polyphony on a small device like an Arduino. Polyphony being the musical term for more than one note being played at the same time.
Yep. Yeah, that's how much I know. I'm trying to build these things. I don't even know the terminology.
So it's possible, actually, just thinking about using timers on an Arduino, that with an Arduino Mega, which is a slightly bigger one, like you've got there. It's in the garden. You've bolted it to the shed.
Well, I've got another 2 on the shelf.
Of course you have. Of course you have. What was I thinking? That's got more timer circuits.
I believe it's got 3, but it kind of needs 1. But you can hijack it.
Okay.
I could be wrong, and that allows you. Oh, sorry. I think that allows you to play basic chords because chords are 3.
Yep.
Notes. Yeah. You're very musical, and I like circuit boards. That's it. That's all I know.
I'm not musical. I was a drummer.
Well, okay. We're very good at hitting things until they work. No.
I can count to 4.
Oh, there you go.
Ron just posed a question. Training.
It's from my Facebook profile. Obviously, I'm a dog walker. I do dog training and stuff like that as well. And I think my bio, I think I said something along the lines of I don't know, the dog walker, cool cat, hot dog, parrot trainer. I think there's a certain amount of jest in that. I mean, I would help someone train a parrot if they'd be interested, but I don't have any parrots to practice with at the moment. So,
but you never say never.
That's it. But anyone's interested, get in touch if you've got a parrot and you need it training, and I'm sure we can work it out. We can set up an Arduino to help with it.
Yeah, well, you're saying about having is it Poppy, your dog?
Yep.
Having an automated ball launcher. I saw one a few years ago that was a bit of sort of hydraulic-y kind of type linear actuator and a spring and and the ball gets placed on by the dog, waits 5 seconds, it lifts up. I think hours and hours of fun.
Personally, I had a similar thing, but I thought a Nerf gun. Nerf guns have 2 spinning rubber discs inside them. And they just spin those discs really, really fast. And then the second the dart touches it, the dart just fits through and it fires. I thinking you could get exactly the same design and you wouldn't have to have hardly any moving parts because you drop the ball in, it rolls down a chute with just enough momentum to go up the chute a tiny bit and touch the bottom of those balls. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure you could get it to grip, especially if you fitted like Velcro or something to the discs rather than rubber discs with Velcro over them, because tennis balls have that fine,
wanting to do a tennis ball per se,
because otherwise you're going to butt it back over and over.
Yeah.
It's going to need enough momentum to depress the rubber slightly unless it sticks. That's spitballing for another day.
Right. Okay. Next week. Yep. Fantastic. And Ron just qualified by saying, had to ask.
Well, with all this talk, I might have been a parrot trainer. I can certainly talk.
Well, in the background, thank you to Nick, Dan, Ron, and Dan and Nick and Ron. Is that you got Ron as well there? and Ron.
Yeah.
And Nick and Dan. Thanks, guys, for joining us and chiming in. Thank you to everybody else that's been watching. The future of SHEDcast is in question at the moment. I'll drop that little bombshell at the end of today's show because as we come out of lockdown, quite what I'm going to do about the SHEDcast continuing, I'm not sure. So there's discussions going on in the background as to how we either continue or cut the legs out from underneath it. So if you have an opinion on that, please chip in either on Facebook or YouTube. You can chime in. And we'll see what our viewership thinks. But it's not nothing's in the bag, nothing's decided. So we're just going to try and see where we go from here. If there's a desire to see this continue, we shall continue if we can. What else was I going to say? Oh, last week we were talking at fair length about the Guernsey shed opening on last Saturday. Bottom line is we decided not to in the end, as the new guidelines came out for phase 4 coming out of lockdown. As the phase 4 guidelines were sort of clarified, we started going through them, and whilst we could have complied with all of the regulations, we're an organisation that fits in between some of their existing regulations. So we are dealing with senior citizens, so we've got to apply to some of those criteria. We are a community, so we can apply a community group, so we are subject to some of those guidelines or regulations. And then we also wanted to be able to serve tea and bacon butties Saturday lunchtime, because that's a core to our activities on a Saturday. And therefore we then sort of had to look at the guidelines for cafes and restaurants and stuff like this. And at that point, it started getting still possible, but a lot of hoops to jump through. We'd have had to submit risk assessments to Environmental Health Department and get their approval. We'd have had to, everyone would have to be seated. We were going to suggest doing it outside for bacon butties. Nobody could have gone up to the barbecue. We'd have had to serve them quite possibly one by one to get their bacon. It's not impossible, but it's more hoops to jump through. We'd have had to write down who was there and keep the contact details for contact tracing. Not impossible, but it's another hoop to jump through. And we'd have had to document exactly where everyone was seated. A couple of photographs would have sufficed, but it just started getting more and more difficult. And of course, we'd have had to get that permission ahead of time. So Saturday, we decided, let's not force it. Let's not push ahead rapidly. We are probably going to wait for phase 5, which I think is going to be another week or two. So sorry, fellas. I know you're itching to come and play. And we're desperate to see you all and have a laugh again. But we're just holding on for the time being. Your safety and everybody's safety is our paramount concern. We encourage you, as Tom here has been actively creative and devouring new information and playing with stuff, I still, as I often have on the SHEDcasts, encourage you to even now try something new. Even though we're coming out of lockdown, or hopefully are, pending any further cases cropping up, I encourage you to try something new. It might be Arduino that we've talked about today. It might be electronics that maybe you used to do in a former life. Get back into it. Have a play. Do something creative. Because that engages our minds. We learn stuff and we're active. So I heartily recommend it. Whatever it is, even if it's building a matchstick model or something, get creative, do something. And I really do look forward to seeing what everyone has been up to over the lockdown period. Anything to add, Tom?
If you made that automatic chicken feeder I was talking about, no one would have to touch the food. Like, you put some bacon through it as well. Like, would save the regulations. Like, you know, because if no one touches the food, then everyone can help themselves. It's just an idea, you know. Seeing you're halfway there with it already.
I like it. Jim, one of the Makerspace directors, Makerspace being a charity that is operating co-located with Men's Shed in Guernsey. He has long held the desire to build a bacon butty vending machine.
I definitely do that. Like, yeah, that's.
And it takes, a refrigerated compartment, and it's able to take a slice or two of bacon.
Yep.
You get to see it on the hot plate. You get to smell it on the street as it vents all that smell. Lightly toasts up your sandwich and slaps it in. Napkin, delivers it out the front door. What could be better?
I've seen a hot burger vending machine about 6 or 7 years ago of course, in Amsterdam. Where else do you need a vending machine to be on the street at out in the middle of a street at 3 a.m. where you can stick money in and a burger comes out? Like, but hot burger vending machine, like. So they are possible. You could definitely make a bacon sandwich one. That'd be a very British version. Like,
frightfully, yes.
Yeah, that's it. And a cup of tea as well. Like,
nice cup of tea, brown sauce. Although that's getting into the whole. It's a bit like discussing politics and religion, which we touched on earlier. The debate of brown sauce or red sauce, but.
It's not a debate when it's brown, is it? Like, it's just HP or nothing. Like, HP or go home.
Fair play. He's nailed his colours to the mast. Well, Tom, it's been an absolute delight talking to you. I've been on Facebook following your progress over the last couple of months, and it's blooming marvellous.
My boredom,
so as soon as it's night time, whenever that happens, about midnight for you.
I know.
Do shoot if you can. Do shoot us a bit of video and then squirt it our way, and we'll play it in on a future show.
Excellent. I will definitely in the coming days. I'm going to get maybe we can get that sensor line moved. I'm going to get a nice video of the gates, the two gate sequences, the on sequence and the off sequence. Sweet. But it is going to have to be filmed at midnight, and I'm going to have to go walk into the garden and then wait for that light to go off to be able to
wait for next door's light to go off.
Well, that's it. It looks good when the light's on, but you can't really film fairy lights in there. I've had a slight problem photographing the results, particularly.
Very difficult.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. Hopefully, in the next few days, we'll get that sorted, and I'll get you guys a video up. I'm very excited to make one, so I'm not going to forget, and I'll be very excited to share it. And if anyone does want to get into Arduino, I'm by no means an expert, but when it comes to like making the circuits, doing a bit of programming, getting the first steps in, I mean, I've just re-gone through the whole of the first steps recently, and I'd be happy to help anyone that was interested.
Awesome sauce. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, that's great. So catch Tom on Facebook. Just do a Facebook search for Thomas Foxon, and he is in Dalry.
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 Dalry. Dalry. It's probably like,
I'll shut up. Thank you very much, Tom.
Scotland.
Thank you so much for your time. Scotland, just head north.
Tom's in Scotland.
Go up north and ask for Tom.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you next week. Cheerio.
Bye-bye.